Hello, hello, hello. So happy to have you with us. So, we are doing another recap. This is going to be the ultimate recap, I believe is what I called it, part 2. We're going to be covering the latest episodes of The Bachelorette with Katie. And that way, when it's time for hometown dates, when it's time for the Men Tell All, we will be up to date. You could watch the first episode on my channel and this one, and you will be totally up to date. So let's start the special recap special part 2 now. So in episode 4, as you know, there was, or maybe you don't, I'm going to catch you up right now. There was a group date. They were eating peppers. They had to do all types of weird things, dares to win Katie's heart. And in this episode, we see she's talking to Greg and she's telling him that she's falling for him. And she can see herself with Greg in the end. And then, this is not the only person she said she could see herself in the end with. So to me, that I think she said it about at least 2 other guys in either this episode or the couple of other episodes we're going to talk about. So that's telling that she can see herself with more than one man in the end. Obviously, the whole Thomas fiasco continues in this episode. But Trey was the one who got the rose from this group date. And then she talks to the 2 hostesses for the show, Caitlin and Tasia, and she talks to them about the whole Thomas thing. Tasia actually talks to Katie about Blake and tells her that she thinks he would be a good addition to the men in the house because she feels that Blake is genuine and that he's a stand-up guy, yada, yada, yada. So this is all, I don't know why I use that, but this is all coming into play in Katie's mind. So, obviously the whole Thomas fiasco continues. And Katie's main thing was not Thomas's honesty about, I had thoughts about this, thoughts about that. She felt that he was coming into this with something else, for something else other than her. So that was a big thing for her. The boys are squabbling over this whole situation. Aaron, who's always calling out the character of other men, but displays, questionable behavior of his own, starts kind of like screaming at Andrew when they're talking about this. Don't yell at me. Don't yell at me. And pointing out the fact that he feels Andrew S. is, kind of speaking in an elevated volume toward him and feels that he's being disrespected. So the guys, they all can come together with one thing, and that's bashing Thomas, which they continue to do endlessly in this episode. Then in terms of handing out the roses, all the guys were a little concerned that Katie couldn't see through Thomas's facade. However, she decides to give roses to Hunter, Greg, Justin, Brendan, Andrew S., Aaron, Mike P., James, Josh, Courtney, and Andrew M. I believe Michael A. also already had a rose along with Trey. So then she comes to the last rose. She calls up Thomas. Thomas is believing he's actually going to get the rose, but instead she steps away from him and basically gives him a no by telling him he's selfish, unkind, a liar, and told him that his Bachelor audition was over. So the other guys who did not get roses, they, could kind of hold their heads high, knowing that at least Thomas didn't get a rose over them. Then in the end of the episode, we see Katie telling Blake that she wants him and she wants him to continue in the process. So that's the end of episode 4. Let's move on to episode 5. Actually, I think that was episode 3. This is episode 4. I'm doing episodes 3 to 6. So, in the next episode, Tasia announced that to the men that Blake is coming into the household. Greg is mad. Obviously, all the guys are a little upset about it. And, are talking about it. Andrew has a one-on-one. Blake also has a one-on-one. During her date with, during this episode, the theme, they talked more about her past unfortunate experience with lack of consent was basically the theme, and also the assault that happened against her. And it was really interesting because this is the second time in this season that they talked about it. They also talked about it in episode 2. And, when Blake asked her about it, she did talk about it, and you could tell it still affected her. And when things like this happen, unfortunately, sometimes it does take time to heal those wounds, but sometimes it's still very fresh. To talk about things like that can take you right back to that moment, and it can be very difficult. So I definitely applaud her for having the tapping into that power to be able to talk about it and share this with Blake. And it's not just like she's sharing it with Blake, she shared it with those guys in the group date, and I'm sure the ones that weren't there, they found out about it later. And then also, with the audience, who's watching. And I think that it is important to, in a safe space, if something like this has happened to you, to talk about it, to seek counseling, to know that you're not alone. There's so many women who go through things like this and they don't actually report it, because reporting it brings a whole nother set of difficulties emotionally, mentally, and so on and so on. And not everyone has a support system. And even if they do have a support system, sometimes people do not feel as though they can reach out and tell those people what has happened to them, because they may not get that emotional support. So it's a lot to deal with. And I am just, I do think that Blake handled it very well with how he, talked to her. He listened to her. He asked her the question, he listened to her, and then he immediately followed it up with, it's not your fault, and that sort of thing. And, unfortunately, when you're a victim of something like that, you can never hear too many times, it's not your fault. It's not your fault, because that sort of thing gets internalized. But anyway, I don't want to talk all about this, but I do think it's really good that she was able to share that with him. And I did like the way that he handled it. So with Blake back in the house, it just adds another layer of competition. And, Aaron speaks up and says he's not happy about it. But what's new? He, doesn't seem to be happy about a lot of things going on in the house. They have a group date that kicks off. It's like kind of like a rugby sort of thing. And they said, Hunter, who, has a fun father side, by the way. He, was very intense and he kicked things off in a very intense manner because he was very, as they said, aggressive on the field. And the thing is with Hunter, like, he's very, like, much so a manly man. He, like, thrives on, like, this whole, like, testosterone thing. You can see it. He's like, yeah, I'm ready to get out there and do this and do that. And that's how he kind of, like, channels his aggression in sports. So I don't think the guys were really prepared for how he is dealing with the stress in this capacity of living in the house, and just probably, he probably works out, and that's probably how he handles his stress. So this was just another form of that, and I don't think some of the guys were prepared for it. Aaron was happy that he, was able to show off his body in that outfit because he feels he was working hard in the gym. So I guess some of the guys can relate to, spending time in the gym and managing their stress that way. But in terms of just the level of intensity that Hunter was bringing to the game, I don't think they were ready to handle it. But regarding the actual takedown that everyone was talking about, Justin was the one who actually took down Michael. It wasn't Hunter. They kept talking about Hunter, but Hunter just may have brought that energy and level to the game on the first takedown. But that takedown heard around, Bachelor Nation was actually done by Justin. And, it happened. It occurred. He apologized for it on the field, but look, this is a game. These guys know they could have done. It's not Hunter's fault. Like, they could have dialed it back a little bit, but they did not. So even though the black team won, she felt everyone was a winner. Kind of like how millennials were brought up. No, she felt everyone was a winner, so everyone got time with her. And no, we weren't brought up that way, maybe. So basically, they all got together and had that sort of cocktail hour with Katie. And then Hunter's tactics on the field did not stop there, because during the cocktail hour, he just continued to play hard and make sure he had time with her. At one point, he already had a rose, but at one point he had a setup with a telescope and a blanket and a very romantic setup. The guys had their Bachelorette tribal council meeting on the sidelines. It was James, Aaron, and I don't know who the other guy was. Maybe it was Trey. They're all sitting around and talking about how Hunter is getting extra time with Katie and how they're mad about it and all this other stuff. They're just moaning and groaning about it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, are you going to do something about it? Like, what are you going to do? So James actually did go and request additional time with her. And so they were, I guess that kind of shut them up. But it seems like they have like a new pack running in this episode, and now they're trying to take Hunter down. So the guys who got roses, along with the ones I've already mentioned, are Greg, Aaron, Michael A, Connor, James, Justin, Mike P, Brendan, and Trey. And I believe I already mentioned Andrew S had a rose, Blake had a rose, and the ones who left were like Josh and I also mentioned Hunter had a rose. Josh and Courtney left as well, and some other guy, I didn't know the man's name. All right, so that sums up episode 4. So let's get into episode 5. So coming into episode 5, Mike P is saying something like these guys are screwed. Haha. I must have thought it was funny. I don't exactly remember why I referenced that in my notes. But anyway, Katie had a special challenge for these men, for them not to touch themselves. Basically, some of the guys don't know how to do that. Some of them are going to find a hard time to do that. Oh, right. Mike P said they're screwed because he's a virgin. So he's been mastering that, I guess, for quite some time. And the other guys have not. So that's what I was referring to. So I think it's a good idea for them to do that. I don't see anything wrong with her challenging them to do that. Let's see. They seem to be very disciplined when it comes to, working out and that sort of thing. So why not be disciplined in that area as well and see if they have some level of self-control. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the challenge she had them go on. Katie also revealed, Justin gets a one-on-one, Connor gets a one-on-one. Katie also revealed she found out after her dad died that he was not her biological father. And so that was definitely something that affected her. They had a group date where they kind of had to roast each other. Hunter took the high road because everyone was kind of gunning and coming for him. And they're calling him a super fan. I don't see what the problem is with that. He watched the show before he came on the show. So that means he knows about the show. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that, if anything, it just kind of gives him a little bit more of a perspective. But obviously, like, what you see on TV and what you experience are probably two different things. So I don't know why the guys are, making it like a big deal, like he, is I don't know. So anyway, James goes to confront Katie about Hunter. It's just annoying because it seems like since day one, we've seen this theme with these guys going to confront Katie about one of the other housemates. Oh, this guy's a bad guy. I know this guy's resume. This guy is horrible. Get him out. And they rally against these men like this. I just think this, since episode 1, it just set a bad tone. Like, there's no need for this, constant barrage of assault on these other men's characters. Like, I just think that she will eventually gravitate towards whom she's going to gravitate towards, and the cream will rise to the top, we hope. So it seems like these guys were being given golden stars and cookies and roses for saying, oh, this is a bad guy, this is a bad guy. But I just think it just set the tone the wrong way from day one. So the guys are coming for Hunter, but Katie comes for him too, because she decides to confront him based off of the information the other guys are sharing about him, or allegations, I should say. So when she confronts him, she actually feels sick, and then so that's how that ends there. Caitlin and Jason, Caitlin, one of the hostesses, and Jason, they get together and they're kind of having like almost like a little double date sort of thing with Katie and Connor. Katie has yet to see any sort of chemistry with Connor. And this is kind of like the premise of the date with Caitlin and Jason, because Caitlin was saying, like, at first, because I guess Jason was on someone else's season. So at first they weren't even romantically involved. I guess they became involved a little later. Caitlin didn't really see him in that capacity, but then I guess as time went on and they both became single, then the opportunity arose. So I guess they were kind of put there to see if Katie could have that same sort of storyline with Connor, because Connor was someone who she had no chemistry with, and they had yet to even kiss going into this date. And I guess maybe Caitlyn and Jason were seeing if that's something that could develop with them. And there did come a point where they did kiss, but later, unfortunately for Connor, Katie just didn't feel it from the kiss, and there was nothing from that. And I think he kind of confronted her like, oh, you know, where is this going type of thing. And we all know in Bachelorette history, or maybe you don't, but I've noticed that when they do that, it doesn't normally end well. It's almost like they push the Bachelor or the Bachelorette into saying, no, you know what, I don't really feel it. I don't know why it happens that way, but it seems that has been the trend on the show. And so when I believe Connor confronted Katie about this, and she was just like, I'm not feeling it, and he left. And he's like, oh, what is it about my kisses? Wah, wah, wah. But it's not you, Connor. It's just you guys together, I guess. So that unfortunately didn't work out. Can't pause this, so I guess I have to keep talking. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think that there are opportunities for chemistry and stuff like that to grow, but sometimes if it's just not there within like the first 3 dates or something, it's just not going to be there. There are instances, rare occasions where that attraction gets woken up after like people have known each other for a while, but I think that's like more of the exception and not the rule. I feel that if you're not feeling it like within the first 3 dates, and if it's not growing, if there's nothing there, a lot of the times it's just not going to be there. And I don't know what sort of capacity they were quote unquote friends, because I think people use that term very, very loosely. I think maybe there was potentially an attraction between Caitlyn and Jason, and they were just both with other people, and then eventually they both became single, and then that's when they started dating. So I don't know the capacity of this, what people are referring to as friends, but I always think that that is definitely a term loosely used, and some people are not really friends. They're just saying they're friends, and they just know each other and maybe flirty with each other, and that creates a breeding ground for something to develop. So anyway, I don't want to go into a whole tangent about that, but that's what I think the setup was with Caitlyn and Jason. When you're in a situation of The Bachelorette and a show that has a deadline, you're not on there looking for someone that you can be friends with. And then after the season of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette is over, then hoping that there will be some chemistry that develops. You want to get with someone who you're attracted to and whom you're also friendly-ish with through conversations, and you can have a conversation with them, but you're not looking for someone to be a friend with, and at the end of this just be friends and then hoping that something will develop. That's not the premise of the show. So I don't know why they kind of use that as an example. Yes, you know, you can have that chemistry and be friends with the person in a relationship capacity, but I just thought it was very interesting that they used Caitlyn and Jason as an example for potential hope for Connor and Katie, when that there was no hope there. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's not there. It's not going to happen. Again, this is just my opinion. I know we have some listeners, and some of my subscribers have been married for decades. So I'd love to hear from you if you were friends with the person first, or you just were dating. I think one of my subscribers said, it happened very quickly for her. So I can imagine, they might have been friendly toward each other, but they had a romantic undertone there. So again, this is just my opinion and my quick assessment on the situation. So anyway, back to the episode. Blake comes to cheer up, Katie after the whole Connor thing, and she's surprised with it. So it was like her going from a draught of chemistry to an overflowing passion, and her and Blake really, were able to connect through affectionate kisses. Then, going back a little bit though, Trey was a little surprised because he feels like he's very similar to Connor. So I'm thinking in this episode, well, maybe you're next, Trey. Maybe you're not going to be on here much longer. And the look on Mike P's face when he heard that Connor wasn't going to come back. I'll try to insert a pic of that here. And also, those who did get the roses, Justin had a rose, Blake gets a rose, Andrew S., Greg, Michael A., Mike P., Brendan, and those going home, Hunter, James, Trey, and Aaron. So Trey did go home in this episode. So did Hunter, so did James, so did Aaron. So I feel like she got rid of that pack that was going to come down the line and start doing their little witch hunts against other men in the house. And I think also that, so to speak, could use other terms for that. But anyway, and I also think that a lot of the drama coming from Aaron, that was eliminated as well. So she kind of just didn't want to keep going with that. And now it's getting into more serious times in this season. So I think that's why she did that as well. So let's continue with the next episode. So in the last episode, we're going to cover episode 6, the most recent one. And actually, just to go back really quickly, I said Connor confronted Katie. No, actually, we're going to talk about who confronts Katie in this episode. But Katie actually went to Connor in the last episode, and she actually said, hey, and this was before like the dinner portion of the date, and she was like, hey, I'm not feeling it, sort of thing. So going into this latest episode, so Greg has a one-on-one. It goes well. Now it's Brendan who goes home after confronting Katie about one-on-ones because he had not gotten one yet. Now they had a group date where they did the painting and the art. Also, Blake and Justin. So it's Greg, Michael A., Blake, and Justin are the last 4. Justin looks so nervous. Those are the ones who are moving forward. Justin looked so nervous when he was getting the rose. Like, he looked like he didn't even want to breathe on her. Like, I was like, maybe that's a trait to look for. Look for a man who doesn't even want to breathe on you. Like, they just they don't want to breathe on you. They don't want their breath to disrupt even the little baby hairs on your head. That's how much they care. So Andrew S. goes home, and I think there was some sort of exchange that happened in the end where, that was that little snippet we saw where she's like running, Andrew, and he's like, hey, what? And she like runs up to him and she like jumps on him, and then she's like, hey, if I can get you to stay, would you stay? He's like, no, you don't want me as your first choice, bye, sort of thing. So that's what we saw, and there was a lot of sniffling going on between the two of them when it was time for him to leave. I was like, there's so much sniffling going on. The mic is picking up everything. But it was so funny. I always think, I'm like, she asked him if she could walk him out. I'm like, what if he's like, no? Just for one season, I want someone to do that. I want them to ask, hey, can I walk you out? Or the guy be like, hey, can I walk you out? And like, no. Like, what happens after that? Has that ever happened? I don't know. Anyway, thanks for listening. Let me know if you have any comments, anything I said. It would be great to hear from you in the comments section. I always love listening to my subscribers. You're the best. Thanks for listening, watching, subscribing, and sharing, and replaying. And I look forward to meeting you in the next one. Bye.